All right, high rollers, great to have this guy back, a good friend of the show, and although we've never met face to face, I know we'd hit it off. Perhaps one day we'll do Vegas together like it's meant to be done, baby. What happens in Vegas ends up on his podcast. He lives in California but has a deep love affair with Sin City. The podcast is Faces and Aces Las Vegas, and this guy is the host. Chris, welcome back to the show, man. Thanks for being our high roller.
Hey, thank you so much for having me back on the show. And that meeting is destined to happen. It just hasn't happened yet.
Oh, we know it's going to happen. It's destined. You got that right. We're going to have some fun. We're going to gamble, and we're going to win.
I guarantee everything except for the win.
Yeah. Listen, before we talk about your recent trip to Vegas, I was running down your Twitter profile today. Again, at Faces and Aces LV. What's this about you being the king of all media now? Are you on Twitter Live? What are you doing? You branching out or what?
Twitter Live was a strange experiment that I tried to do when we were out in Las Vegas. We had a high limit slot pull, a group pull. So we had myself with about 12 to 14 people in the room, as well as a few people. Well, I don't know. I don't even know if this is legal to admit, but there were some people who had PayPal'd me some money for my own personal use, and then maybe I put some money into the pot for them.
Okay, I see what
So
you're
for
doing.
that,
Pooling your money.
we pooled our money and we did a group high limit slot pull, and we broadcasted that over Twitter. And unfortunately, it didn't quite go the way we wanted to, but it was still a lot of fun.
What was that all about? Was that the reason you were down there? Because I was going to ask you about your trip. I know you spent a lot of time at the slot machines, and again, you had this group pull. Was that for charity? Was that just for kicks? What was that all about?
That was for kicks. I mean, basically, we went down there. It was a trip called Oceans 14 XL. And the trip originated with two people, Mitch and Kev from the Tipping the Odds Las Vegas podcast, meeting up with our friend Doug. Who also has a blog, epicesquire.com. And so they were heading down to Vegas, and I'd met Doug before, we're friends, and I had never met Mitch and Kev, so I, sort of surreptitiously invited myself onto their trip. And once I was a tag along, there were a few other people who also wanted to go, and slowly this thing just snowballed into some sort of event. And we coined the phrase Oceans 14 XL as a joke on Twitter, and we just ran with that. And so at the end of the day, probably about 20 people met up that weekend in Vegas.
This Vegas podcasting community is pretty strong, isn't it? You guys are all friends. I know you've always got a friend to visit when you go to Vegas.
That is one of the nice things about doing a podcast that I never would have anticipated. The friendships that you make from going to events like Oceans 14 XL or the 360 Vegas Vacations or the summit put on by the Nerd Society. It's a whole bunch of people of like minds who enjoy the city, who love everything about the city, whether it be the gambling, the food, the drinking, the camaraderie. We all just have a really good time together. So I'm a really big fan of these group gatherings.
When I talk to you, you sound pretty sane, but I got to question your sanity when you talk about slot machines because you know the odds, my friend, on those things. I'm wondering why it wasn't like red or black or a quick roll of the craps die. Why slot machines?
Well, the group poll is always a fun thing to do. I think you are 100% correct. If we were to do this again, perhaps red or black might be the way to go. But there's something about slot machines where it's a prolonged experience, and it was one of the events that was on the itinerary, so we wanted to make it last for a good 10, 15 minutes, something that we could all kind of ride the roller coaster together, maybe get a couple of bonus games. And at the end of the day, I think we all knew we were basically throwing our money away for about 20 minutes worth of enjoyment. But there's always that hope, that little bit of hope that you're going to hit the progressive, which, by the way, we did witness on this trip. Not someone from our group. We just happened to be at Paris where we witnessed someone hit the $1.2 million slot progressive.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. Just at first, she didn't know what happened. The machine went dark, except for one little bar at the bottom that said progressive 1.2 million.
Oh my God. You talk about some good ROI on that trip for that woman.
Yeah, I'm just saying, our group has good karma. Unfortunately, we didn't spend that karma on ourselves.
Well, you
But I'm
talk
glad
you
that
talk about the anticipation of that group pull, and I get your drift because one of the game. I mean, I don't play any games in the casino aside from poker. Once in a while, if there's a group of us, family, friends, we'll get together at the craps table and we like to rant and rave and cheer and roll the dice and try to go on a good roll. We expect to lose, but you mentioned it, that anticipation. And when you're in a group like that, That's part of the allure of gambling, as long as you can be responsible about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had a set budget. You know, everyone contributed $50 to the poll, and it was just the fun roller coaster of the ride. Watching the anticipation of the wheels lining up, or whatever you have it on the slot machines, and everyone being disappointed together, everybody being excited together when you win a little something. So it's mostly for the camaraderie, and with the slight hope of a big pay.
I remember one time I was in Vegas and my sister and brother-in-law were there. We witnessed these guys driving in from California after work on a Friday night, I guess, and they were all there. There was about five of them, and they were playing red or black at the roulette table, and they were winning, and they were drunk, and they were winning, and they were drunk, and they were all laughing, and they were quite entertaining. But slowly the tide turned, and they kept asking each other, "One more pull?" And they'd kind of pump themselves up. The next guy'd say, "Yeah, one more pull." And then they'd be like, "Yeah, one more pull, one more pull." Then they'd be chest bumping, you know? And they lost it all. I'll tell you, it was one of the most entertaining things I had ever seen. They walked away from the roulette table, and my sister looked at me and she said, "Red one time?" And we each put $50 in, went to the same roulette table, put it on red, and we won and we walked away. It's one of the great memories I'll always have of Las Vegas was that time watching those guys with my sister and brother-in-law and then going and playing ourselves.
Exactly. And it's that bonding experience that you remember whether you won or lost, because the next time you go to Vegas and if you run into the same people, you have that running joke of, boy, we suck. We
Yeah.
lost.
Hey, listen, lots of great stuff on your website. I was checking it out. Twitter profile again, at Faces and Aces LV. The website, facesandaceslv.com, where you will find the latest podcast, episode 40, October 23rd, titled I Get Around. See, I do my research, Chris. This is fascinating. You take a look at getting around on the strip. We're talking buses, cabs, ride sharing. I mean, it's getting easier and easier all the time, isn't it?
It is getting easier getting around in Vegas with so many options, you know, especially since rideshare opened that up. However, there are ups and downs to the many different options that are on the strip. For example, myself, I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but I prefer to take cabs when I don't have my car in Vegas, just because the cab drivers typically know where they're going. It's a well-lit area where you could pick up a cab. You're amongst a group of friends or a group of people, as opposed to rideshare, where typically it's usually the side or the back of the casino in a dark alley, and I've had experiences where rideshare people have driven by me several times, and I call them and they pretend like they're still on their way. And I've had a frustrating experience, whereas a lot of other people have had good experience with rideshares. So, but there are so many different options, and we explore that in this episode, which is a two-parter. Part two should be coming out soon.
Let me ask you this. Is it an age-old question or a silly question? Take your own car if you can versus the cabs.
I guess it really depends on A, how much you drink on your trips, and B, if you're willing to pay for the parking at the different casinos.
Right, because the money you spend on your cab, you got to put it down for parking nowadays anyway, because Vegas is changing, right?
Absolutely, and unless you could find a way out of paying for parking, it probably makes sense to just fly in and just go either cab or rideshare or bus or monorail. I'm a big fan of the monorail.
Well, besides the fact that all these mega giant corporation hotels are nickel and diming people nowadays, how has Vegas changed for you over the years? Because I know when you go on these trips, you do a lot of things. I mean, you really pack it in, so you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I tend to overplan for my trips, so that way I am never at a loss for something to do. I think the way that my trips have changed over the years is I've slowly become less of a gambler and more of an enjoying experiential type things, going with groups of friends, sitting at a bar with a great view and just having a nice conversation, playing group games like a group slot pull or slot races or slot golf, things that extend your budget a little bit further. And every so often I'll sneak away and do my madman gambling, with so as not to intrude on take away group time. But the strip has changed quite a bit. I'll be honest with you, I'm just at the tipping point. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue to enjoy Vegas because it has changed from what I've truly enjoyed in the past.
Wow, so it is getting that bad then. I know every time you look, there's a new charge here, a new fee there, and it's like, oh, this is expensive.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily the expense, but it's the impact that it has on me mentally, where I used to feel like Vegas was this great place of pure freedom and you could let go. And now it feels like I'm going there where I have to watch my wallet and be aware of what the charges are to the left of me, to the right of me. And to me, that's an unpleasant experience.
A few times I've been to Vegas and I've been in the poker room nonstop, only in the hotel room to sleep. And on the winning trips, it's great because, hey, I've won some money. That's what I went there for. On the losing trips, you're coming home and you're thinking, what did I really experience in Las Vegas this time besides the poker room? You know what I mean? So I like the fact that you pack your trips in. I want to go back to Twitter for a second. You posted a picture, and I'm curious. The caption reads, "This disturbs me more than it probably should." Can you talk about that picture? Is that a mannequin he's rolling around there? What's going on there?
So you've probably passed by it a million times. Madame Tussauds will have their little mannequin display of some celebrity, and you can stop and pose. It's a nice little photo op as well as promotion for Madame Tussauds if you tweet that out, and the world can see it. Well, I guess I got out there early enough in the morning where they were setting that up, and it was basically a guy who had a woman on a hand cart rolling her into place for for the day's activities. Which is, I just found it a bound woman on a hand cart to be just a disturbing image, even though she wasn't real. It just bugged me.
Yeah, I thought it was a funny picture myself. I got to talk to you about Epic Esquire too. I see you retweeting some stuff of theirs. What is Epic Esquire?
Epic Esquire, he is an attorney in New York, a fantastic guy. His name is Doug. Really just as nice as they come, and he likes to come out to Vegas, and he and I have met up in Vegas once or twice before, and he keeps a blog of his gambling activity over at epicesquire.com, as well as his trip reports. So it's his personal blog and website.
I'm going to see if I can get that gentleman on because I read some of his stuff and it's pretty interesting. Now, I hate to bring it up, but Las Vegas, I mean, the talk of the world, still recovering from that deadly mass shooting a month ago, October 1st. It was indeed a bloody Sunday. I know you visited the memorial at the iconic Welcome to Las Vegas sign. What are your thoughts on what happened that night and what it was like for you visiting the memorial, where I'm sure many tears have been shed, tributes have poured in? I mean, it's a pretty emotional time there.
Yeah, it really was. Visiting the site was something that I felt that I wanted to do, almost needed to do. I have such a bond with the city of Las Vegas and its people there, and I wanted to show my respects. That was one of the two memorial sites that they have currently, and I believe at some point they're going to be getting rid of it, which, that leads to another discussion down the road. But the mood that was there was somber, mostly respectful. I think there were also some people who were posing for their, standard Vegas picture in front of the "Welcome to Las Vegas" sign, and they were kind of gleeful and silly, and it was this weird, odd juxtaposition. At first, it struck me as disrespectful what they were doing, but then after considering it, not necessarily everybody has the connection to Vegas that some of us do. So I understand that they're there to have a good time and have some fun. And getting to the debate that I was talking about, many people feel that memorial at this point, 3-4 weeks out, should be moved to a more secluded private area so the city can get back to what it was. And mostly what I experienced in the city over the Halloween weekend was a good time. Barely anybody acknowledged what had happened, which I think rightfully so. At a certain point, the city does have to move on to getting back to the business of sin.
Your sense then, I know some of the signs of the memorial read this, but your sense is that it's Vegas strong and Vegas together? You think the city's getting on with things?
I think the city is getting on with things. Out of courtesy, they've left the memorial up for visitors who would like to go there. I feel like the city is trying to pull itself back together and move on. It's a difficult topic to discuss, just because at the time, I felt it hit me. It really did hit me very hard, and more than it probably should have, considering I'm not a resident there. But just considering the loss of lives, the 58 people who passed away, and for me, seeing the white crosses, an artist had come down and set up 58 white crosses all along the median by the sign to, for each one of the victims lost, and seeing the sheer number of it really hit home. I'll admit I shed a few tears, and I'm getting a little choked up now, even just remembering it. So it's definitely an emotional thing, worth going to. Difficult to, and I'm very happy that I went there with a few friends, so afterwards we could kind of lean on each other and discuss our feelings in the car on the drive back.
You mentioned it there that it does hit home because guys like you and me, you more so than me, but Vegas is a regular stop. It's a regular destination for us. We go there. It's part of our lifestyle. And it could have been any one of us at that concert. And, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but the official story seems kind of strange. And there's lots of, conflicting stories, but let's hope Vegas gets on. You mentioned it there with the business of sin, right? I mean, that's what people like to go and have some fun, and that's what it's there for.
Yeah, it's a party town. Let's, call it what it is. It's a party town. It's a gambling town. It's a good time town. And at a certain point, not to disrespect those who passed, but, the city does need to move on and get back to what they're known for, and find a less public, more appropriate place for people to, show their respect to those who passed. And that's a very important thing to do, in my opinion. As well as, like you were talking about, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are floating out there. And for me, I ignore those, because at some point the news will the truth will either get out there or not get out there. But whatever may or may not have happened doesn't really make up for the people who passed.
Yeah,
and
you
for
still
me, it's the people that matter.
yeah, you've still got that that site of 58 crosses. I mean, that's pretty hard to see, right?
Yeah, 58 crosses representing 58 people, and just if I could throw in a little plug, if anybody out there does feel compelled to donate, the Las Vegas funds are still open, and you still can make a donation to help the families of the victims.
Yeah, it would be great for people to donate, and you got to check him out on Twitter, folks, because he's doing these random acts of kindness. It's your way to help and show support for the Las Vegas victims. Talk about that.
Well, I mean, basically, I know that this tragedy comes, at the tail end of many other tragedies that preceded it, whether it be Florida, Texas, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and people may be tapped out. And so one thing that I thought of to do, if you are frustrated and feel like you want to contribute to the world in some positive way, go out and do an act of kindness for each one of the victims who passed in Las Vegas. So I kind of started this hashtag 58 acts of random kindness, and I'm going to go through, I don't know how long it's going to take me, because I don't get out much, so this might take me a while, but basically I'm just heading out into the world and doing random acts of kindness for people, for strangers that I've never met before, and letting them know why I'm doing it. Just saying, hey, I think the world could be a little bit of a better place, and I'm just, if you feel like you can, pay it forward, and just doing nice things for strangers. So right now I'm on 6 acts of random kindness. The last one being, I believe I helped a guy change his car. No, the last one being I paid for an Uber for a woman who needed to get to the mall. You don't necessarily need money to do this. Just go out there, maybe hold a door open for someone, maybe, let someone in line in front of you at the grocery store. It could be simple things, but I feel like if we get out there and start spreading a little bit of kindness towards strangers, it will improve our communities, our neighborhoods, and, if it spreads, maybe further.
Oh man, that's such an amazing thing you're doing. 58 acts of kindness. The hashtag again, 58 acts of random kindness. You helped a guy change his tire, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the gas station, and the guy had a little bit of trouble, so I 2 young millennial kids who had never seen a tire jack before, so I got out of my car and I, helped them get their tire up, or their car up, and change the tire, and it took all of 10 minutes. So just 10 minutes out of my day to hopefully make their day a little bit better.
Well, you're only at number 6, but the response has to be great so far. You must feel better about yourself. And what kinds of things have the people said to you?
Usually they're a little bit surprised that a stranger stopped to help. I think the biggest impact of doing this so far has been it's really turned a mirror on myself, because I'm kind of a nice guy, but I have road rage. I have certain times that I can be a little bit of an asshole, and at those moments I kind of look at myself and said, maybe I should take the nicer path. Like, there was a good example. There was a guy who was trolling me on Twitter, and I really wanted to mess with him. And I thought, what's the actual nicer thing to do? So actually doing this has kind of changed my perspective on how I behave in the whole. So it's been an interesting experiment. And I'm only on 6. And again, it might take me a year to complete all 58, but I'm determined to do it.
Well, it's a great thing. It's a great experiment. I hope more people get on the bandwagon with that, because you're onto something here. The hashtag 58 acts of random kindness. The website facesandaceslv.com, and at facesandaceslv on Twitter. Please check them out. It's a great time. Chris, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me on. It's good talking to you again.